So I'm one of the co-coordinators for the CCNet Australia Aotearoa. Leah Feuerhardt's another co-coordinator, and we've also got Hao Jin, who's based in Aotearoa, who couldn't make it today, I think. But this one is a joint. It's our first joint webinar with Southeast Asia. So Lavanita is here as one of the coordinators, and the Pacific Islands Network. So Yvonne also is here. So hopefully we've definitely got people from different locations than we usually do. So it's really fantastic to actually have this as like our first real joint webinar, and hopefully the start of doing more things together in the future. Just, not only does it make it much easier time-wise, so it means that we're not kind of, those of us in this time or these time zones aren't having to do stuff in the middle of the night or, times which are quite inconvenient. But obviously we share, lots of things around more cultural similarities, but also, ecology, and as well as, similar challenges and things. So I think it's a great opportunity for us all to share our experience, but also and learn from each other and support each other as well, which is really about what the Conservation Coaches Network is learning and supporting one another. So the way we're going to run this today is an overview presentation, really a quick run through on what were the main kind of topics that were covered. And then we're going to go into a bit more depth into a couple of the sessions. And then after that, there'll be time for questions. So I just can say we'll run through all of the presentations first, and then there'll be time for questions at the end. If things do come up, it'd be really helpful if you put those questions in the chat going through. So yeah, before you maybe forget them as you get new pieces of information, and then we'll come back to those. So I will hand over to Yvonne, who is going to start us off.
So good day, everybody. Again, my name is Yvonne Ueda. I work for the Nature Conservancy in the Micronesia, but I'm based and focusing on our projects in Palau. Just traveling in here in Fiji, so it's kind of nice to be in this side of the world and joining you all on this call. And so for just a quick overview of who and how many people participated in the rally. If you missed it, there were 180 people that registered and participated from 70 organizations, 40 countries. Of course, we were in Chile, and so we had a lot of participation from South America. So we had, of course, bilingual sessions. We had live translation at times. Format was amazing. I think it was a great blend of working sessions and conference, sort of a big hall presentation, presenting on bigger themes. But overall, I think for myself being the first, this being my first rally, I felt like it was a great balance and sort of the format that they integrated into the rally for the duration of the rally in Chile. Next slide. So for today, these are just some of the topics that we're going to be covering. These were also the topics during the rally, and so you will get a snapshot of what was presented, discussed throughout the rally. And so I will open with a session on the conservation standard version 5. And so next slide. And so during this rally, there was unveiling of the open standards for conservation version 5. Based on how they presented, it was a lot of contribution. Here you have 88 contributions from 30 plus organizations, working groups, and 18 months of a lot of work and coordination, pulling all the changes to the conservation standard. And so you have a list there of some of the things that have changed in the standard, and we will share you a copy to the link of the version that it's been distributed out in the website. Some of the changes are, I think, climate change guidance update that I've just recently reviewed, equity principles as well, and so those are just some of the updates in the version. So please feel free to go and have a look. I think there's a next slide that's kind of just showing some of the terminology changes. So from focal value, from targets and assets to focal values, targets from desired future value, instead of strategy, it's action. And this is just, I think, was intended so that we can align us this standard with other tools that is out there as well. So just making it easier for us practitioners and especially the communities and people that we work with. I think that was it from me. Open the floor if there's any other additions from the team. If not, I'll hand it over to Saras for the healthy country planning.
Thanks, Yvonne. So this session was really a bit broader than healthy country planning. It was really around how to support like Indigenous peoples and local communities leadership and self-determination, and how you can use adaptations of the conservation standards. But obviously healthy country planning, which was developed here in Australia with the Wunnambul Gumbra people and supported by the Nature Conservancy and Bush Heritage, has actually really been picked up quite a lot and then adapted again in local context. So we started off with 4 case studies. So we had Valentina presenting a case study on working with women in Colombia and their planning process, which was an adaptation of healthy country planning. We had Narang in Mongolia talking about how they've used that in the adaptation in Mongolia. Lavanita presented on WWF's work working with local communities and Indigenous people in Malaysia, and that was really focused on kind of implementation as well as more into implementation. And then in Australia, how we'd used healthy country planning in a slightly different context to actually help do an evaluation and develop an evaluation that actually evaluated what the traditional owners wanted. And so this was a schools program called Learning on Country in the Northern Territory. And so these presentations were kind of to help people understand different types of adaptations and what are the strengths, but also some of the challenges with those. And then we ran an interactive session to help people actually, discuss where they thought that would sit in like a spectrum of, was that Indigenous led or local community led? And what were the key features that maybe you could see across all of the case studies? So, some of it was obviously, that some things can work across, but there are important contextual. So place is really important, and you need to work and adapt to the place, and that's where you really need to work with community leadership and support them. Really important to listen to diverse voices. So, very strongly coming out about allowing and listening to women's voices, the importance of building trust. So these things take a long time, and that you need to share learnings and create, create the plans together, really. And also sometimes tools need to be co-created so that they're appropriate for those local areas. And really that as, conservation planners, that our role is to support community leadership. Not that we are leading it, but we're facilitating it. And then, things like respect, obviously being culturally sensitive, having empathy, and always supporting collaboration and demonstrating that. A few of the things that will be then working on some more tools to support practitioners as well, to support the communities they work with. Thanks, Annette. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Cyrus, and hi, everybody. I'll go through a few of the other sessions that were held. As Yvonne said, this is really a snapshot of all the things that were talked about. There were 5 sessions running at any one time, and 3 days. There was a lot of sessions, but trying to pick out a few that we thought might be of broader interest. There was a couple of sessions on this concept of portfolio management, which I hadn't really seen much at rallies and CMP retreats in the past. But the concept of trying to move from talking about individual projects to talking about programs of projects and up to the organisational level where you might be managing multiple programs. Lots of organisations are grappling with just how do you do all that. So there was some really great conversations and little case studies from a range of organisations about just how they're going, adopting the conservation standards, but trying to use them across this sort of portfolio management approach. There was a session where people were sort of commenting on where they're at and what they're learning and what they're struggling with, and starting to share all those kind of lessons. And as part of that, they emphasised this group. I don't know if some of you probably know about it, but the Conservation Standards Adoption Support Group that meets pretty regularly to try and share what people are learning in this kind of space as well. There were a few sessions around Mirardi, and particularly also reinforcing this sort of portfolio management approach where there's data structures now being built out within Mirardi to help manage the linkages between individual program projects into a program. And they also talked about what's coming next in just the Mirardi world. Certainly at Bush Heritage here, and I think a few others are quite interested in this work planning features that are coming in pretty soon. They're almost done in development now. So yeah, lots of work on that sort of technology front. Quite a few sessions on scaling, and you've probably heard about this in the past, but again, in the concept of how do we have impact beyond sort of any one project, and if we've got a good idea in a project, how do we scale that up to do more of it in more places over longer periods of time? So there was a plenary conversation and then a half-day sort of working session, which was really great illustration of just how this can be done. I knew a fair bit about it, but the working session was fantastic to see how it might work. They had a particular example from Conservation International about scaling up this particular project, which is around mangrove protection in Indonesia, which was being cleared for shrimp aquaculture. When they first looked at it, it was an impossible task to scale it up. It was like $20 billion or something it was going to cost, and they worked out a way to actually really start to make it happen globally. And so really great sort of proof of the approach. And as part of trying to help people learn what this is all about, FOS have set up a few working tools and a facilitator's guide for how to run with a team to really nut out how they might scale up their great idea, whatever that great idea is, enough to get it to a point where you can make it kind of go, no go, we could actually try this or not, and to kind of get to that point in sort of half a day or so. So there's some really great facilitation materials there if you're playing in that space. Another project, and there were a few conversations and a few sessions about this, all about monitoring. There's a project funded through the Moore Foundation and being led by some folks at WCS. They call it COMET, but it's really around monitoring, and they're trying to gather monitoring methods from all around different organisations, and ultimately come up with a bit of a repository so that people can find monitoring methods that work in particular circumstances, and sort of have worked examples, templates, all that kind of thing. Yeah, lots of interest in that. So hopefully that team can really crack this. It's been tried a few times with, I think we've always struggled, but high hopes for this group. That's being led overall by Rachel Newgarten at WCS, and there's a team at WCS driving this with the community. There was lots of talk around, specifically around protected area management and using the conservation standards in that space. Within South America, a lot of the protected area bodies are using the standards and are sharing their learning, and there were some really sessions where these people are having a lot of fun, I've got to say. Lots of laughter coming out every time I wandered past from the various national park groups within South America. But the project that's running is around trying to improve the way reporting of protected area management happens globally. And it's tied a little bit to the global 30 by 30 target, which, if you know much about that, it's protecting 30% of lands and waters, but not just protecting them, but showing that they're effectively managed is the terms that are used. And so this is trying to come up with it. There's so many different ways to report on effectiveness of management. They're coming up with sort of a Rosetta Stone kind of approach based largely on the open standards, where people can report in whatever tools that they use, but be able to sort of translate it and compare. And so that work is happening via the World Commission on Protected Areas. And it's hooking in the kind of green list. So the green list folks have got their way of reporting, and this is sort of adding a almost like a translation capability to that. So that work's being trialled already in a bunch of places. A bit more work to do. I think the time frame is around September this year. They're hoping to have that come out. Another key kind of emphasis was on behaviour change, and again, this is sort of woven now into the Conservation Standards version 5. Another project that's funded through the Moore Foundation, and drawing on the work that RARE has done over quite a few years now, to really help coaches and teams work out how do we get behaviour change. Most of the problems we deal with, the threats we face, are all people responding to some sort of incentive that is causing damage to the environment. So often it requires a change in behaviour, a change in incentives to get that protection happening. And so what they've done is taken a lot of the really great work that RARE have done, which is technical in nature by definition. It's all the sociology kind of research that they've been doing, and trying to turn it into simpler approaches and embed it within the conservation standards. So they've got these options around the types of change you might try to get. They're coming up with guidance on each of these options about when you might want to use it, how it might work, how you might do it. And they're building all that out into a website that will have a page on each of these options, again, with guidance. So if you're coaching teams where they really do need to try and work out how to get some sort of behaviour somewhere changed, I think this will become a great resource. I know it's there in draft form at the moment. I don't know if it's sort of officially published. I don't think it is, but it won't be far off if it's not. So it's definitely something to kind of start trying to get your head around, I think. And then a project that I've been involved in is, again, on a similar sort of lines. It's around markets. I've been working with people from what's called the market system development community, which are the practitioners that work on big sort of international aid projects, typically around sort of poverty reduction kind of work, but there's often a biodiversity element to that. But people in conservation, practitioners in that space, don't know a whole lot about conservation. And then practitioners in our space don't know a whole lot about economics. So there's sort of two different worlds there trying to deal with the same issues. So what we've been working on is right now it's a bit more leaning towards the market systems development community, but a common approach that starts to certainly bring in elements of the conservation standards into the market systems development work, so that the development economists and the like can factor in biodiversity elements, climate change elements into their project planning. And what we're working on now is kind of the inverse of that. What can we pull from market systems development into the conservation standards, and worked examples and case studies and guidance and the like, to help us who we really don't want to be dealing with economics, but in reality, I think we probably have to in a lot of cases. So how do we make that easier for people? So that's a quick run through of some of the key highlights. There is a website where all this material is available. Encourage you to put an hour aside in your calendar in the next week or two and actually go in and look at that that site and pull out the topics that are of interest and dig a little bit deeper into all this. But I might hand back to you, Lavanita. Are you going to do a bit of a wrap up and then move on? Or?
I'll not wrap up yet. I'll do my session first, I think, and then I'll wrap up towards the end.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. And okay, let me share my screen. Let me see if I have the right. Yes, I have. 1 minute. Okay, screen 2. Let me stop my video first. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Can you? Okay. Yeah. Right. So I'm just going a little bit more detail on one of the sessions that I've attended. It's about mentorship. Yeah. And this session was conducted by Colette, Christina, Oscar, and also Marco. Is it moving? No, it's not. Okay. So these were the session objective. And more importantly, the fourth objective here, they're actually using this session to gather inputs for an action plan to support and promote the CS mentorship within CCNet and beyond. I mean, also the broader CS community, right? So this is how it's a 3-hour session apparently, and with break in between, and this was how it was conducted. I will go through hold on, yeah, okay. So this is the first session, or first agenda. Yeah, so what's his name? Oh my God, what is his name? Sorry. Okay,
Oscar.
never mind. No, what is his? No, I forgot. I just mentioned his name just now. What was his name? This
Oscar.
Guy. No. This. Oh goodness. Wait. Sorry. No. Oscar. Yes, Oscar. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. So Oscar actually presented about what a mentor is and what it is not. So these were part of his presentation. I'm not going to go in through all this because we'll be giving you the link to the full presentation. Yeah. Okay, and this is also part of, so it talks about the key guidelines for being mentor and also the type of mentor-mentee relationship. Now, the next session after this was actually each of the coaches, I mean, the contributors actually presented the type of mentor-mentee relationship experience that they've actually experienced before. Yeah, so they have a full, just so you know, disclaimer, they have a full on presentation which you can access later on. What I did for this presentation is I combined everyone's presentation into just several slides. So there's 3 types. So Oscar presented on the mentor-mentee alliance, and then Marco talked about occasional contact, and that is the type of mentor-mentee relationship that he had. And what is Colette? Colette talked about collaborative initiative leadership mentor model. So this is three different type of mentor-mentee establishments, I would say, and these were the difference between the 3. From my personal lessons learned from this would be, I think it depends on which. So if you see, all of this would have the same challenges. For example, like, okay, it's busy, it's time, like how much time they have to actually contribute to this type of relationship, and especially in managing that relationship. Because if you see, for example, what's his name? Oscar was saying, for his type of relationship, because we asked, there was the time they talk about the time frame. So he said, it's for me, it conclude organically. So I don't know how he meant by organically, but I think it's once the mentee reach a level of independence and maturity, and then it shifts into a more like a colleague or professional peers relationship. But the other seems to be, if you see the other two, they're like, there's a time frame where they were no longer mentor-mentee, and that's it. Okay. So, but it's interesting to actually hear their experiences. And for Oscar, I think his mentee was actually in that room as well. So there was really good feedback, and also, yeah, good dialogue that we had during the session lah. Right. Okay, so I'll just skip all this because you can see a fuller presentation for this session in the link that we'll share later, which has already been shared by Annette actually. Right. Okay. Then after this session, so there's the three sharing from the three coaches, and then we had initially they planned to have a breakout session, but I think they decided to just have a plenary session where we discuss about three questions. And I think this is mostly to fulfill the fourth objective, which is to come up with an action plan to encourage mentor-mentee and whatnot within CCNet and beyond CCNet. Okay, of course you cannot read. Then what I did was I actually transcribe it here. So this is the first question. So how to build mentor-mentee relationship. So these were the things that we during our discussion, it was how to say, they took note of that, and this is our control. Yeah. And if you see, like, they also have the third row here. The row. Yes, row. Okay. What can CCNet or CMP do? So these were the list of things that we said, maybe, okay, we can do this. There's also a suggestion for a speed dating session at future rally. And then one of us actually say, but we need to know whether or not that person wants to mentor, because sometimes not everyone wants to mentor, no, and neither do everyone wants to be menteed. So that's a thing. And what's your name? Natalie, remember, you're a certified coach, no? So we also say that I think one of the participants said that maybe in the future for coach certification, one of the requirements would also be they need to have a list of mentees to actually be coach certified in future coach certification this thing. Right. So the second question was on expectation, the expectation from mentors and mentees have of one another. So these were the things that we discussed about, and contributions that the participants provided. And then the third one is about the challenges and limitation in relation to mentoring. So this is a whole list of all the problems and what we can do to solve the problem, or elevate the problems. Okay, what else is there? Okay, I will just go to that. Then the last session was actually Oscar came up, drew a person on the paper, and then we talk about the characteristic of a good mentor and mentee. So initially, I know if you see here, there's like mentor and a list of patience, confidence, commit, whatever, and then mentee would have all these lists as well. But as we were discussing, then we realized that, hey, actually, all these qualities needs to, both mentor and mentor needs to have that. It doesn't mean that mentee do not need to have patience. I'm sure as mentee, they need to be patient as well. They need to be patient as well. They need to have confidence as well. So if you ask me, I would just combine these two things together. There's no difference. So and then there was this question of what can we do? I said, then be all of the above. So yeah, makes sense. And then the next question was on what CCNet and CMP can do. So these are the things that we will try to, I think CCNet will try to make all this available. Okay. And then after that, we actually stuck these sticky notes, like where it fits in a human body. So like, for example, like real work, we said, okay, stick it on the feet because it's talking about work. Energy, stick it at the feet as well, and things like that. Emotional, I'll put it at the heart, things like that. So I think that's the end. Oh yeah. And this picture here, it's actually from Christina's PowerPoint, which I stole and stuck it here. So this is how that's the continuation of the original mentor stickers, and this is the modified version. Yeah, so I think that's all for that session, my session. Yes, okay. I shall now gladly pass my session to Natalie, who's going to talk about policy and fancy stuffs. Okay, let me ask.
Thank you, Lavanita. And before I start Lavanita, you were awarded a network award at the rally as well, yes? So congratulations to Lavanita for a well-earned recognition at the rally for all of your support for CCNet and the Southeast Asia CCNet community. So yay, Lavanita.
Thank you.
Okay, I will share my screen. All right, bear with me. Share screen. And then button. So hopefully you are seeing my slide deck now. And so the session I'm going to talk about is one that I helped develop and deliver, which was entitled Navigating Policy Engagement, so Insights and Tools to Support Conservation Standards. And so the focus of this session was twofold. One was around information sharing on a CMP collaborative learning initiative on policy. And the second part of the session was actually sharing some practical tools and approaches that different organisations had for considering policy when undertaking conservation planning. So the Policy Impact Initiative was the first part of the session, and it was a presentation by Lisa and Nico from FOS Europe on the Policy Impact Initiative. And so the Policy Impact Initiative is one of, I think they said there was like 21 different CMP collaborative learning initiatives, and this was one of them that was supported by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation and the Walton Family Foundation. And you can see the people who were involved in this collaborative learning initiative on policy impact on the slide there. So representing multiple organisations, and Lisa and Nico are the ones who were leading this work. And so one of the outputs of that policy impact initiative is the development of a policy guidebook. And so it's currently still under development. They're still sort of finalising the content of that guidebook, but it's based on what they learned through this policy learning initiative. And it intends to bring together and create a practical resource for organisations involved in policy work that brings together the insights and tools on key policy issues and the linkages to the conservation standards for those who are involved in the conservation standards and working on policy. And so Lisa and Nico presented on this. Hopefully I will do it justice. It is not my presentation, but I'll share some of the things that I learnt through it. But this initially is the 5 areas or the 5 chapters that they're intending to include in the policy guidebook. So going through the initiative, they sort of heard and learnt about sort of 5 different things that they thought were related to the conservation standards and how we do policy work. The first of those is the policy process, the importance of policy windows, and to engage in the policy process. The second one was then assessing the policy context, particularly for that political context for when you're working on policy. The third is planning the policy engagement and specific tools and approaches to support doing that. The fourth one is around the role of evidence in policy work. And the final one was measuring success. Particularly, you know, it's a bit more challenging when you're talking about the policy space. So how do you go about doing that? What are some tips for how you can go about measuring success of your policy work? I'm going to touch on just the first one at this point in time, but the presentation that's available on the CCNet on the Rally website goes across all of them, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of the things that came out. So the first one that they mentioned was the policy process, and it was really interesting for me because TNC internally has a version of the policy process, and this was a pretty consistent, but with some slightly different tweaks from our internal one. But the policy process that they developed starts still on getting key issues on the agenda, and then it focuses on designing like well-designed policies. So it's doing the research, the testing, and all of that sort of things to make sure that policy proposal is well designed, is going to solve the problem that it sets out to solve, and is not creating any other issues down the track. Then the third step is getting the policies adopted, which is, you know, a massive process in itself to get to that point. Then policy is being implemented, because as we know, there's no point having a policy if it's not then implemented, because that's where the actual outcome is achieved. Then policy is being reviewed to make sure they are delivering what they are intended to deliver, and likewise going around that cycle if you need to adapt the policy or amend the policy, getting it back on the agenda to do that. The things that they added to this as well were, we've got to go through all of that to get to the impact, but also that there's general constraints, a capacity to deliver, and then these policy windows that affect our ability to be successful in going through that policy process. And so the policy windows component of it, they described, which I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail. But this is how the chapters that they're proposing in this new policy guide book fit against that policy process. So the role of evidence, it was scary to me, I have to say, that they indicated that quite often there is certain particular places where evidence are really important in the policy process, particularly in the design of policies. And there's other places in the process where, despite the fact that you'd like it to be important, it's not. And it is more, there's other factors that come in around behaviour change that have more of an influence on whether a policy is adopted, and less evidence might play less of a role, which was really interesting. So they're the chapters that will be in the guidebook, and there'll be some additional guidance on those going forward on how to incorporate policy. So on the policy process windows and engagement, Lisa and Nico described what they called the policy streams framework, which is a theory that tries to explain why issues are raised in the policy agenda and how the policy agenda is set. And so they described it as these three streams. So there's the problem stream, which is the recognition of an issue by government of where problems are brought to their attention. And these can emerge out of things like crises, disasters, or feedback on existing programs that kind of bring attention to an issue or a topic. And I'm thinking, as an example, in Australia, when we've had droughts, then all of a sudden water becomes this really topical issue. Or when we had the really bad bushfires, all of a sudden climate change is back on the agenda. And so they're the kind of things they're talking about as the problems bringing or highlighting that relevance of an issue. The second stream is the politics stream, where decision makers set their priorities. So they said that might be influenced by things like public will or the national mood, by elections or changes in government, by shifts in the ideological distribution in government, or by pressure from interest groups trying to get something on the agenda. And so that's what they described as the politics stream. And the third and final one is the policies stream, which is where you're developing ideas, proposals, potential instruments, or potential solutions that are being developed, that you're researching and testing with the public. And that's what they described as the third stream. And the theory is that each of these streams run independently of each other, but there can come a time where those three streams come together. And when they do, it significantly increases the chance of policy action being taken and being successful with your policy work. And so they sort of said, the policy stream is always open. You can always be coming up with potential solutions, researching those solutions and testing those solutions with the public, but that you're more likely to be successful in getting those solutions adopted when either the problem stream opens, that raises the awareness, makes the issue really topical, and or the politics stream opens. So there's the openness within government to consider adopting a solution. And so they described it as, ideally when all of those three strands come together is where you're most likely to be successful and get a policy win. Some of the session takeaways for me from the presentation, or that, you know, we wanted people to take away from the session as well, was that this guidebook is coming. It's not finalised yet. It is also going to bring together not just the recommendations from the research that they did as part of this policy impact project, but also tools and approaches that some of the different organisations have used, and that others might like to adopt and use. So that's coming. It's not finalised yet, but it's on its way, and there may be opportunities to have input into that as well. And the second thing is that there is an informal network of conservation standards coaches and practitioners who are working on policy and are using the conservation standards, and that we are keen to hear from others who would like to be part of that, so that we can learn from each other as well. So there are some of the key things from the policy session. And I'm going to stop sharing and pass back to Lavanita.
Thank you, Nat. Right. So we're actually towards the end session in our agenda. So are there any questions, or if not, there's no questions from the floor. If there's any extra input from the ones who actually the coaches who actually attended the rally and whatnot. So we can have, let me say, 5-10 minutes for this bit of time if it's useful. Yeah. I don't see any hands or any questions in the chat. So yeah, Saras, I saw you went unmute yourself, so I'm assuming you want to say something.
I was really interested in the mentor-mentee session, and I just I wondered whether there was anyone on this call who is either you know, in a mentor-mentee relationship, either as a mentor or as a mentee. So that's one thing, and like any insights that you've found, and also whether that's something that people think would be useful, and whether they think there's a role for the coordinating committees, you know, to help match people up. I know in other organizations we've kind of actually just like a really not a complex program, but just people who are interested in what kind of thing, you know, to be a mentor, and then, you know, then we just kind of, we have that list of their skills and what their interest, you know, what they can do, and then people have just said, oh, I'm looking for a mentor, you know, I see that these are the areas I'd like to focus on, and we just kind of have done a bit of a match up. Yes.
So okay.
I have been part of mentor relationships. I'm going to say, if Pip's still on the call, I would consider Pip a mentor, and certainly have over the years, even though we might not have set it up formally or anything like that. But in my new role, separate to conservation standards, but have tried to set that up as part of my professional development, and think it's incredibly valuable to do that. And I know they did at the rally, and I didn't make it in the end just because it was at the end of the field trip and things like that. But they also had that rapid coaching session as well, which I think is another kind of opportunity, almost a different form of the mentor-mentee relationship in a very rapid way. But I think they can be incredibly powerful. And I know that was someone, it was that Sarah Pearson as part of our team that actually reached out to the broader network and requested that. And I think that was an incredibly valuable thing to do, to reach out and ask, you know, if someone's would be willing to do that. So I think, you know, there could be something we could support.
Yeah, and actually
broadly.
so from the discussion during the sessions, those are the things that CMP, CCNet is supposed to actually support. So they should have a list of potential mentors. If we can even put potential people who want to be mentored, mentees. So in the website, so those information should, if once they come up with the action plan, remember the fourth objective for the session is to come up with an action plan to support the need for mentor-mentee and whatnot within the network. So that should be out. We can always follow up with Christina, what's happening with that, if it's this thing. But it has been, these were the type of suggestion which was actually being highlighted or brought up during the discussion session. So we will see what happens. Yeah. I would like to share the session that I actually presented at the session together with Sarah. I just wanted to share, like, I remember we had a breakout session and we all have our 4 tables and we invite the participants to separate themselves, no? So in my session, it was so nice to have, because I remember we had 2 or 3 communities from Colombia who actually joined the whole rally session, no? So they were like grouped to my table. I think they wanted to see, because I was presenting a project which has already been implemented, and I was asking for feedback, how best can, if we were to do something like this again in the future in our programs, how best can we be more inclusive, or things like that. So it was really nice to get their feedback, and a feedback from a community who's actually, a community. He's not the program implementer, no, a community themselves. So it's really good. And the how to say, the more interesting part, again, they don't speak English. So they had a translator who was assigned to move around with them throughout the whole rally. So it was so nice to be able to communicate with them. Of course, I don't speak Colombian, so it was so good to have that translator who actually followed them. And yeah, we were able to communicate. They were able to actually give input to my paper, my mahjong paper, and it is really nice. So just so you know, that also happened in the rally. And I hope in future rallies we'll have more community members, the actual community members, not a planner, or it's good to have them in that type of in the rally. I feel, I don't know, what do you think, Saras?
Yeah, I think that's it's a really good point, actually. It did. So not only did they come and present at another session, but they also were able to actually attend and get benefit from, benefit themselves from hearing what others are saying and doing, but also then, because all of the sessions are interactive. So there's a bit of context setting, but then most of it, like you can see, they were all like 2 or 3 hours. So it was all the opportunity to sit down and talk and discuss specific things from that session. And so for us as planners or supporting communities to hear direct is really good. I think it's definitely something I think CCNet and CMP are keen on doing. So this was the first time we'd actually held a joint rally. So for those of you that maybe don't understand, conservation measures partnership, they're the ones who are responsible for like the conservation standards and making sure that they get updated and available. So they run a lot of those programs, and that's organizations belong to that. And then Conservation Coaches Network is individuals who use the standards. So that's really about supporting practitioners and developing our coaching skills. But, obviously we want practitioners to be involved in the network as well. But one thing is always money. It's always, to get more people, communities involved, we really need to be able to sponsor them. And that's another reason for moving the rally to different locations around the world. So it gives local people in that region more opportunity. And translation, simultaneous translation was really good to have. It just meant that a lot more people could participate. And I think there's something in the chat.
I love Leah's comment in the chat, like, because Leah's comment is, I'd like a mentor who is 20 years younger to help me connect and understand the younger generation and their concerns with conservation. And because so often we think about it as the other way around, the sort of more experienced people mentoring, potentially less experienced people. But I love that way of framing it, Leah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I don't have kids either, so I don't even, I don't have that connect there. So it would be very valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree to that. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. Any more things to talk about, or any more questions? So we can give your 5 minutes, precious 5 minutes back to your busy life. Okay, so I think let me just again, let me reshare. Not somebody Sarah, you'll share all the rally website, but let me share my screen so I would show how the website look like. This is the correct one. Okay. Let me
I
share.
have put the link in
Okay.
the chat. I'll just put it again, just in
Okay.
case.
Perfect. So this is where the like how Anna showed earlier on. So this is where you can find all the, this is the full presentation. Yeah. So you can click on it and it will bring you to the various presentation that you would want to know more about. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. Oh, okay, just a teaser. Let me stop share first. So at the end of the rally, of course, during the rally, we'll always talk about, okay, then think about where the next rally, when it happens. So I think we haven't decided where yet, but I think it would be in another, in the, what do you call, in a place or continent that we haven't had our rallies yet. So we've had, all of you know, we have European continent, and we have North America, South America, and then we also had, I think once Australia, and then the last continent that needs to do, but then they haven't confirmed it yet. But I think we can all start, I don't know if we need to fundraise or whatever to attend. So make sure that more coaches would be able to attend that rally, although we don't know where yet. But yeah, there was a strong vote for the Africa, South Africa. Yeah, but we'll see how. But just so you know, that might happen. Then
Or Asia.
That's right.
or
yes.
Asia. Where in Asia? Okay. Malaysia's not gonna do it. You guys. But anyway, yeah. So Asia, we were pushing like Mongolia. Let's do Mongolia. Maybe we can, more affordable. But I understand. Yeah, I can see Chi is like, like we need a place where Asians or even Australian can go in a cheaper, not so expensive place. Like I remember for me to travel all the way, it took. Yes, we need to fundraise. So yeah, it's good to have a closer to home place. But we'll see. They haven't decided yet. But yeah, in 2 years' time, I hope. So be excited. Let's keep our excitement building up for the next rally in 2 years' time, maybe. Yeah. So I think 2 minutes. Now, apparently, I didn't give you back 5 precious minutes to you guys, but vote for Mongolia. Yes, let's vote for Mongolia. Yeah. So I think that's it from our side, and I hope this was useful for you guys. Please visit the website. You have tons of information in the website, and if you need to approach any of the presenters, contributors, feel free to do so. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to get questions from you guys or whatnot. Yeah. Okay, so I hope this was useful. See you in the next combined webinar. We hope, if you can find awesome topics to talk about. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lavinita.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for presenters
Thank
and
you.
coordinators.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.